All right, we are here at my outdoor worm bin, and we are going to test the difference between putting food scraps in a worm bin versus putting food scraps directly in our garden. And in this video, we're going to show it from start to finish, so stay tuned to the end. But first, we need to check in on our last experiment and our last feeding, which was about a month ago. And we put in some sourdough starter and some sourdough bread to see how well they went after both of them. And we may not see either of them just because it has been so long since we were in here, and that is because I was just looking for the perfect time to be able to get into the garden. And as I'm kind of moving everything to the side, I am seeing lots of worms from our feeding zone. And in the last feeding, it consisted of a bunch of banana peels, the sourdough starter and sourdough bread that I talked about, along with a bunch of broccoli stalks, some strawberry tops, avocado peels, small pieces of onion, apple cores, peppers, tomato halves, a half of a potato, and a whole banana. And of course, we added our amendments in the form of worm chow, coffee grounds, and pulverized eggshell grit. So let's kind of dig underneath and see if anything resembling anything I just talked about is in here. And check it out. They are all over that feeding zone, and they have produced some amazing castings. Now, some of our long-term food is in here. This looks like it was probably part of a mango seed. And here is an avocado shell. I'm curious. Let's see if, true to form, they created an avocado out of it. And sure enough, they did. They, for some reason, love to gather in there, and even if I don't put anything in there, they will kind of end up bringing in some of the cardboard shreds that you see and that kind of thing. I don't know how they do it, or if it just kind of works its way in there, but they absolutely love to go into the avocado peels, and these take forever to break down in a worm bin. In fact, I'm not even sure if they totally do. So I'm not seeing any of the bread or starter. This is just another long-term food. Can probably barely resemble what it started as, which is a pumpkin stem. And it probably has been in there for, at least 7 months, since I probably put it in there somewhere around October. And let's turn this over, and nothing other than this little chunk right here, which I believe is coffee grounds that have kind of matted together. So I'm going to break those up a little bit, and those white spots right there I think are some kind of mold or other kind of fungus. So yeah, I am not seeing that starter. Now, in the comments section, when I did release that last video that we put the starter in, people said, just to be careful about it heating up. And because I didn't come in and dig down and see if it was hot, I just kind of want to put that out there because it does make sense, because the starter has bacteria and yeast in it. And check it out. We have about 4,000 to 5,000 worms in here, and I think they are going to do an absolute fantastic job of destroying the food scraps that I'm going to put in here. And I have identical food scraps to put in here as I do out in the garden. And in fact, we are in a transition between kind of our summer garden and our spring garden, and I'm letting a lot of stuff go to seed. So I've freed up some space. Here's another avocado. Oh yeah, lots of worms right there as well. So yeah, I freed up a lot of space, and in there, we're gonna do our experiment. So let's head out there right now. We're at the center of my 3 garden plots, and as you can probably tell, it is the end of our spring garden. This was cucumbers, and they are dying off quickly, but I'm just letting stuff go to seed, like my beans here as well. So let's go ahead and dig in here and create the hole that we're gonna put our food scraps in. Now, this was where we had our yellow squash, and we had some zucchini here. So as I was making these plots out of our old, really long, I think 12 by 4 plot, I did notice that we had some worms like this. This, I believe, right here is one of those Asian jumping worms. So as the worms compete both in the bin and out of the bin, we will see if these guys really eat the food fast. I don't have any more of these in our outdoor bin anymore. Oh wow, there is another one. It is amazing how quickly they proliferate. And as I understand it, here in Florida, they're not a problem, but definitely out up north in the forests, they are. All right, so we have our hole, and here are the food scraps that we're gonna put in here. We are gonna put in a watermelon chunk, 2 strawberries, a yellow squash that was actually grown right here, and some lettuce that we had grown in our other plot. So let me just kind of put them down. I'm gonna separate them out so they've got equal opportunity to get to them. And then as a control, I'm gonna put some of the shredded cardboard in here, because in my outdoor bin, there is still a lot of shredded cardboard. So I'm not gonna put the amendments, because we just wanna test, hey, can you just put your food scraps in your garden and create worm castings? And how fast are these gonna get eaten up and turn into castings compared to a regular worm bin? So now I'll just bury it up, and then we'll put some more of the wood chips over the top of it. And then I am going to water this in just like we would have happen in our outdoor worm bin. There we go. Another one of those jumping worms. And then finally, I'm just going to put a pole right here so we know where to go to find our food scraps. Now let's go back into our outdoor worm bin. Now, one of the reasons I'm so excited to do this experiment is because I used to put food scraps into my garden to kind of let the critters and the different creatures, insects and worms and nematodes and everything in there kind of attack them and create fertilizer for me. So now we're going to get to see how well a worm bin does versus the outside. Now, I will always say a worm bin is really the way to go because you can take the worm castings that are concentrated here and make seed starter mix or other soil mix or potting mix or put them in your garden. A lot more ability to do different things with it. But what I want to see for you and for me is if just putting it in the garden is a viable way of kind of getting some of the worm castings and fertilizer into your garden. So I laid down just a little bit of bedding, but here is the same thing we put outside. We've got our watermelon, we've got some of our yellow squash, a couple of strawberries, and a piece of lettuce right there. Now I'm not going to put any amendments on, but I am going to put a little bit more shredded cardboard on here, just so we're kind of doing same. So let me just bury this up, and what we're going to do is we are going to wait somewhere between 7 and 10 days, and we are going to go back out there and see how the worms did and all the other garden critters that are under the soil and compare it to what we have there. So here we go. All right, we're back in my garden, and it has been 7 days, and I think we put the food right here. So we're just going to go ahead and spread it out, and we are going to dig down and see if any of that food has gotten eaten. And I'm not expecting there to be a whole bunch, but I expect there to be something from there. And all the, soil critters that are in here should have done a pretty good number on them. And we are going to compare to what we put in the worm bin. So let me keep digging out. I'm starting to see something right down here, I believe. And I think that is at least the rind of the watermelon right there. Let's keep digging down more. And what are we seeing? We got little scraps and pieces, not a whole bunch. I mean, that's really nothing for 7 days right there. Check that out. Let me dig further and see. It's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be as far as being compacted. That right there, look at that. That's a little grub that might have been helping to feast. But yeah, wow, got a worm hanging out right here. I don't know if you can see it, but that right there, I think one of those Asian jumping worms. They've certainly been helping out, even though they're not really good for northern forests. So yeah, I would say that there is not any of the watermelon left, nor of the squash or strawberries. I mean, a seed of some sort, nothing there. Let me dig to the side just to make sure I didn't miss any, but I would say you're putting your food scraps in your garden. You have a garden like mine that's got all kinds of great critters living in it and soil dwellers. And certainly there's probably some red wigglers in here too, because I use vermicompost in my worm bin. But if you don't have a worm bin, you can certainly put your food scraps right in your garden to try and make vermicompost right there. Very cool. Now let's go inside and check how the worm bin did on the same amount of food scraps. All right, we just came in from the garden and we are ready to check on the outdoor worm bin for a 7-day check-in. And one of the first things I noticed is how many castings were right here on top. And as soon as I dig in, we're seeing all kinds of good worm butts. And let's go for it. See what we have. And check it out. After 7 days, we're getting not much, just kind of the rind, it looks like. And there's the avocado shell with a nice worm ball in it. That's great, but let's keep looking. I am seeing some of the rind, I think, from the watermelon. And that is pretty much it. I mean, it looks like there's some more stuff compared to outside. Some of it's from past things that were in here, but I would say, the garden maybe wins by just like a watermelon peel, not by much at all. I'm definitely not seeing any of the yellow squash, I don't think, and I'm certainly not seeing any of the lettuce and not even the strawberry top. Sometimes the leafy part of the strawberry top will show up, but certainly tons of worms all throughout there. Really enjoying enjoying what we put in there. And this was about 4,000 to 5,000 worms against everything that's in the soil of my garden. So I think what this tells us is both are really good options. If you have a lot of food scraps, you'd like to start a worm bin, fantastic idea. You can use any of these worm castings for potting soil mixes or putting them in your garden. It's a great way to dispose of your food scraps and cardboard and paper waste. And if you don't want to have a worm bin just yet, maybe start putting the stuff in the garden. I wouldn't put it right underneath, you know, and then plant something right there. Maybe start on the edges or do it in the off season when you don't have your garden going. But check that out. I would say the garden by just a hair, you know, looking good. All right, so what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna mix all this in, and then I'm gonna set up for another feeding, and then we will close up and kind of conclude. And in the comments, let me know what you think. What, you know, kind of were your takeaways from what you saw there, because this was really cool. All right, so as always, I'm gonna go in with some shredded cardboard, and this is just dry shredded cardboard. I use my 12 sheet crosscut micro shredder to get it like this. It just pulverizes this. And something I forgot to mention outside, I did not see any shredded cardboard. So whatever was down there eating all this, they got to that too. Next, we're just gonna go in with some odd stuff. I've got some shrimp shells right there. And then I've got some mushrooms that went bad. We'll put those in as well. And I'm gonna put more shredded cardboard because I don't think I put enough under there. Put a little bit more. Next, I'm going to go in with some goji berries. These are about 2 years expired, and I don't know if these are going to be like the cranberries that I put in here and last forever, but they are dehydrated, and hopefully they'll get hydrated, and maybe the worms can get to them. And then we'll go in with some garden scraps. We've got some, looks like banana peels, not from the garden, but we've got carrots and tomatoes from the garden and a piece of eggplant. And then more kind of salad stuff, lots of lettuce, little bits of onion, which are okay to put in your worm bin. You just don't want to put a whole lot all at once. And really, you don't want to put a whole lot of food all at once to a worm bin that doesn't have a whole lot of worms in it. This one has 4,000 to 5,000, like I said. 1,000 worm bin, you maybe want to put like that much stuff in it. And all of my food in all of my videos that you see, unless I say otherwise, are previously frozen. Kind of help physically break them down. It kind of expands the cell walls and explodes them from the vegetables, and then they just kind of get wilty and melted, kind of like this. Really helps the worms to get to them, and it also helps the microbes to get to them. So we've got a potato we'll put in there. You don't want to put a potato that you haven't frozen in because it too will kind of grow, that kind of thing, and you really want to put dead stuff. The worms aren't going to eat stuff that's alive, which is why compost worms aren't bad for your garden at all. And this is just the tops of carrots right here. This is just the tops from the garden and some kale. So we've got a nice moist feeding right here, and we'll go in with some worm chow right on top, and it's just some expired pantry items that I have. Just a little bit of carbs for the worms to eat, and then we'll go in with a bunch of coffee here. I just need to get better at getting more of it into my worm bins and therefore into my soil. And then finally, we'll just go in with a little bit of eggshell grit. The worms use it in their gizzards, and it helps me to dispose of my eggshells. All right, that looks like a great feeding, especially for the summertime. This worm bin is really kicking right now, and you can just tell from how quickly the food scraps went and just how many worms are in here right now. So I'm just gonna kind of bury it up a little bit on top. And with this outdoor worm bin, what I do after each of these videos is I will go ahead and water it in. That's because this worm bin is made out of these fabric pots here, so it can release the liquid. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just throw it on my garden when I water it in, so the liquid that comes out will go right into the garden and kind of give them some nutrients just like that. Kind of a freebie when I haven't even harvested. So there we go. And then for volume, I'll just add some more shredded cardboard all around. I think what we'll do next time is we are probably gonna give this thing a good harvest. During the summer, I can harvest this every time I feed and get like 2 to 3 pounds out. And if you wanna see how I harvest this bin, check out this video right here to see how I do it. All right, last little bit of shredded cardboard, and I hope you're having a great day. I hope your worm bins are doing fantastic. So happy vermicomposting, everybody. Take care now.